Hey guys, I found something really exciting this week, so I just wanted to make this short video to help you understand some of the mechanisms that can restrict bile flow, creating the wide variety of symptoms and health issues that can come from that. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So we've been talking literally for over a decade about how, too many grains or processed foods has the ability to thicken up that bile, and then if the bile becomes too thick and sticky to flow correctly, it's not going to come down and do all these things that we really needed to do to help us digest our food and all these other functions. I'm not going to go over all those functions. I probably made 700 videos where I talk about that, so just watch like any other video, am I right? So we won't go too far into that, but what's really interesting is that we've seen this correlation for a really long time, and this is one of the reasons that why when people remove all these grains and a lot of these processed foods from their diet, they see a world of improvements. Now there's other reasons that these can create improvements as well, but improving bile flow is a really big factor in that. But I haven't always understood the exact mechanism that creates this problem when it comes to grains. And I heard this doctor talking in a video, and then he said that wheat germ agglutinin has the ability to block cholecystokinin. And then he went right off and started talking about something else. And I was like, hey, wait a second. That's a huge piece of information. So I did some research and I found some studies that confirm this. And I'll link those studies in the description below this video if you want to dig a little bit further into that. But basically, wheat germ agglutinin, or WGA like all the cool kids call it. Now understand that I'm not saying gluten. This is not the same thing. I'm saying wheat germ agglutinin. And this is a lectin that is found in a lot of grains. And basically what we found out was that it has the ability to block cholecystokinin from doing its job. So cholecystokinin is a hormone that really gets active here in the duodenum, or the first 10 inches of the small intestine there. A lot of people say duodenum. It's a lot more fun to say duodenum, trust me. But what happens is it gets triggered here, and then when the cholecystokinin is triggered, that triggers the gallbladder to drop this alkaline bile down and help us digest our food and all these things that the bile does. But the cholecystokinin also triggers the pancreas to say, hey, it's time to squirt some enzymes out here and bicarb and all the things that really need to happen for that digestive function to happen the way that it should. But it appears that this WGA has the ability to block the receptors for that cholecystokinin so that it can't function correctly. And when the cholecystokinin is not functioning correctly and the body is not responding to it, that means that the gallbladder is not being triggered to drop that bile down. And I've talked in a lot of other videos about how when it's not being triggered, that it will just stay in the gallbladder. And the gallbladder's job is to concentrate that bile so that a small amount is more effective. But if it's just staying in there being concentrated over a long period of time, it can concentrate into either sludge or eventually even into stones. And I go into real depth into this in our full digestive reset video, and I share studies and things like that. So if you want to check that out, we'll put a link to that video in the description below as well. I don't want to dig into all of that, but that's a really crucial situation. And the way that we viewed it is that there's so many things that can restrict that cholecystokinin from even being triggered, for even being activated. Like cholecystokinin is triggered by either stomach acid leaving the stomach, or fatty acids from dietary fats that we consume, or amino acids. Those are the things that trigger that cholecystokinin to say to the gallbladder, hey, it's time to go into action, and to say to the pancreas that it's time to go into action. But a lot of people are not making enough stomach acids, so that's not triggering the cholecystokinin. A lot of people are living in the 80s wearing parachute pants, running in horror from dietary fat when we thought that we were supposed to eat a low-fat diet. A lot of people still do that. So if they're not consuming enough fat, then they're not calling on the cholecystokinin as much. So we were kind of looking at this like, oh, there's lots of reasons that cholecystokinin wouldn't be called on. But from this piece of information, we can see that a person might be making enough stomach acid. They might be consuming enough dietary fat. They might be doing the things that would normally call on cholecystokinin, but if this WGA is blocking the receptors, then it's like the cholecystokinin is not even there. It's like it's not even active because now the signal from the gallbladder and the pancreas are not being received to go into action. And we see all these problems that people have. Oh, I have pancreatic insufficiency. It's just not doing anything. And they told me to go get a new pancreas at a garage sale or something. And people, oh, that gallbladder's not working. We're going to yank it out and toss it in the trash. But it has a lot to do with, are they even being told that it's time to go to work or not? So this can be a really big deal for people that are consuming a lot of grains in their diet. And does consuming grains create like a total shutdown in this scenario? I don't know. I can't really say that. I don't view it like I would like a gluten intolerance because, you know, with a gluten intolerance, somebody really needs to watch gluten. Like they need to know every ingredient in this, and if it has even a little bit of gluten in it, it has the ability to create that horrible reaction that they experience when they consume gluten. And I don't know if that's the same case. I don't know. You know, I think it's going to vary a lot because it depends on how well is somebody's bile flowing in the first place. How well this cholecystokinin is being activated can depend on the amount of stomach acid going in. Do they have some overgrowth that's restricting that acid, or are they not even producing enough in the first place? Are they turning it off on purpose with some medication? Millions of people do that every day. So there's a lot of factors here, but I think that how much that's being triggered can depend on a lot of those factors, and then the amount of grains and amount of this wheat germ agglutinin coming into the system might be a factor into how many of those receptors are going to be blocked and how much that's going to block the effects of that cholecystokinin. So that's what I kind of wonder about. I don't feel like if somebody has a small amount of this coming in that it's just shutting down the whole system in the same way that they might have a reaction to gluten. And since gluten and wheat germ agglutinin are not the same thing, I don't view them as acting the same way. Now, somebody might go on a gluten-free diet, and I did do some research and found that some gluten-free foods still can contain some of this wheat germ agglutinin in it, but also some foods, even when they have wheat, might have some of that processed out. So it's hard to say exactly how much you're going to get in here, but if a person's having a real problem, they can just remove all of it. Wheat, rye, barley, all of those things are going to contain this WGA. That means foods like bread, cereals, and pastas, and all this processed food that we just eat so easily can be causing this problem. So if a person's taking steps to improve their bile flow and they're having a hard time seeing results, this might be something that's really working against you. So it seems like a person really needs to remove all the grains that they possibly can. And the reality is that a person can remove all of them. It's just about effort, and it's just about making adjustments in your life to remove from your life. It's not as hard as you might think. But it seems like a person needs to remove all those grains or really magnify other steps that can help thin out that bile. So if you feel like grains are very important for you to have in your life, you might need to take some extra steps to make sure that this can stay thin enough to flow when it's called on, just in case there are times when you're consuming these foods where it's not being called on and the bile is just staying in the gallbladder and continuing to concentrate and get a little more thick. So if you need to understand those steps that can really help thin that bile out, you can jump over right now and check out our video on 5 steps to improve bile flow to gain more insights in there. I hope this helps.